केशवनीता नरहरि रूप जय जगदीश रे जय जगदीश रे जय जगदीश रे पावक नाथ अद्भुत सिंह दलित हिरण्यकशिपु तनवेला केशवनीता नरहरि रूप जय जगदीश रे जय जगदीश रे जय जगदीश केशवधृत नरहरि रूप जय जगदीश रे जय जगदीश रे जय जगदीश रे केशवधृत जय नृसिंहदेव जय नृसिंहदेव नृसिंहदेव जय नृसिंहदेव जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय भक्त प्रहलाद प्रहलाद भक्त प्रहलाद शिला प्रहलाद निताय गौर हरिबो 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 निताय गौर हरिबो जय श्री भक्ति पद सर्वनाशन कनु सिंह भगवान की जय जय भक्त श्रेष्ठ प्रहलाद महाराज की जय निताय गौरारी प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल श्री वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रिय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सतवताय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रिय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सतवताय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रिय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सतवताय नमो नमः श्रीमती तुलसी देवी वृंद महारानी की जय
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो यही अभिलाषी।
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो यही अभिलाषी।
जे तुम्हारा शरण लो तारा वंशा पूर्ण हो।
जे तुम्हारा शरण लो तारा वंशा पूर्ण।
कृपा कोरी करो तारे वृंदावनवासी।
तुम्हें कृपा करी कर करे वृंदावनवासी।
मोर अभिलाष विलास कुंजे दियो वास।
मोरा अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास।
नयने हेरिबो सदा युगल रूपराशि।
हामी नयने देवो सदा जुगल रूपराशि।
निवेदनाधारा सखीरानुगत कर।
निवेदनाधार सखीरानुगत कर।
सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी।
सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी।
दीन कृष्ण दास को ये नाम रहा।
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 श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदाए नभासी।
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 यानी कानी च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे।
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे।
हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे।
Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Vrinde Devi, Jaya Vrinde Devi, Jaya Vrinde Devi, Jaya Vrinde Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Krishna Prem Pradhani Srimati Vrinda Devi ki.
Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavataye Namo Namaha. Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Oh Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes short of you as wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire that you also give me a residence, pleasure grows of Shri Vrindavan. Thus within my vision I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower carry hands of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant Krishna praise. May I always sing love Shri Radha Govinda Shri Mati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Shastakam ki jai. Chaito Darpana Majanam Bhavamada Bhagni Nivapanam Shri Akari Vachandika Vitaranam Vidya Badhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamritashadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Paravijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vaudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Itadrusi Tava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaivam Idrisham Yajani Nanuragaha Trinadapi Sunichainam Tarorapi Saishnana Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sada Hari Nadhanam na janam na sundarim Kavitamba jagarisha kamaye Mama janmani janmanishwari Bhavatar bhakti rahaitu tvai Ainanda tanuja kinkaram Patitamam visame bhavam buddho Kripaya tava pada pankaja Stitaduri sadrisham vichintaya Nayanam galora shrudharaya Vadanam gadagadharudaya gira Ulakari chitam babukada Tavanamagrane bhavisati Yugaitam nimishena Chakyusha pravusayitam Shunyaitam jagat sarvam Govinda virahena me Aslishabha padaratam pinashtumam Adarshanar marmahatam karotuva Chatatatthava viratatulam pato Matpranatastu saivana para Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam ki jai. Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaura Tishe Namaha. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the five conditions of life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested your transcendental energy. There are no hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself Lord on a stony street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your casual devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on end with the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he should remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam ki jai. Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Premprati Krishna Krishna Chaitanya. There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate your life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods, Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which often Vedas are fruitive activity, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person by the glories of holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It also an offense to be retained if what chanting every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisance unto all the Vaishnavas devoted with the Lord. They are just like desired trees, they can fulfill the desire of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen, conditioned souls.
Shri Guru Pranama prayers कीजिए. Om Ganyati Mirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Madhvam Shri Guru Shri Jitaha Pachakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sa Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Gunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Saivaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Nivitam Sa Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Siddhanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Vaskatya Desatarine Namo Drupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamine Shivarsavanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostate Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gaura Kishoraya Shakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gaura Vir Bhava Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhoma Sri Jagannathayate Namaha Vanchakalpa Turabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Premapadayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guru Chise Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Bhagavate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surator Pangur Mama Manda Matergati Matsarva Swapadam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpadramadaha Shimad Ratna Ganasiras Tatprito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastali Bihi Sevyamano Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsan Venus Vanir Gopir Gopinatak Striyestruna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chintamani Prakara Sadma Sakalpa Riksha Laksha Vride Susurabira Vipali Antam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrahma Sevyamanam Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Menam Gwanantam Aravinda Dalayataksham Parhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobam Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvan Amalya Vamsi Ratnam Gudam Panayakeli Kalavilasam Shamam Jibanga Lalita Nita Prakasam Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purisham Navayovanam Cha Vedesi Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayo Ratapi Manaso Munipungamanam Sopyastiyat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatum Jagadanda Koti Yas Chakti Rasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayanubhusa Suktarya Meva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasatma Pratibhavitabhis Tabilya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalabi Goloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Deva Hidayesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govinda Amadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menatistan Nanavatar Makarod Bhuvanesa Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pamamyo Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhuvato Jagananda Koti Koti Swasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Asesa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Trigun Yatad Vishayaveda Vitayamanam Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Ya Praninam Patifulam Smaratam Upetya Lilayatena Bhuvanani Jaya Jasram Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Tale Chatasya Devi Mahesa Haridama Sute Sutesu Tete Prabhava Nichaya Vihitascha Yena Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shrististati Pralaya Sadava Sakti Reka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichana Rupam Abhyasya Chachestate Sa Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shriram Yata Dadi Vikara Vishesha Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakasti Heto Yasambhutam Apitata Samapaiti Karyat Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Departure Hita Santanam Abhyapetya Dipayate Vivita Hetu Sanana Dharma Yastadri Geva Hicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narna Vajale Bhajatisma Yoga Nidram Ananta Jagadanda Saroma Kupa Adhara Saktim Avalambya Param Swamurtim Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasita Kalamatavalamya Jivanti Loma Villaja Jagadanda Nata Vishnur Mahansa Yasya Kalavishesha Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basmanya Tasma Sakalesu Nijesu Teja Sriyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitadvatatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbha Dvande Pranam Pranama Samaye Sikanadi Raja Vignan Mihantamalamasya Jagatrayasya Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahika Ganamambu Maruddhisasya Kalas Tatatma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Yamcha Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sakalagrahana Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmo Tapapa Nichaya Sutayastapamsi Brahmadi Kita Patagava Tayasta Jivaha Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakata Prabhava Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastrindra Gopa Matavinda Mahosva Karma Bandhana Rupa Falabhaja Namata Noti Karmani Nidahati Kintu Chabakti Bhaja Govinda Madhi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Bitti Vatsalya Moha Guru Guru Vasavya Bhavai Sanchitya Tasya Sadrasim Tanamapurete Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shriyakanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo Druma Bhumish Chintamani Ganama Itoyam Amritam Kata Ganam Yam Gamanam Apivamsi Priyasaki Chidanandam Jyoti Param Apitada Swadyam Apicha Sayatra Siradi Bhihisha Viti Sirabi Bhyascha Sumahan Nime Sardakyo Vavrajati Nahiya Trapi Samaya Bhaje Switadupam Tamaham Ihag Giti Golo Kamitiyam Vidantaste Santakshiti Virachara Katipaya Ishwara Paramar Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Shri Guru Vastika Prayers Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as the cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. Are for my respectful obeisance to Lotus Street is such a spiritual master, is an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments, the spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shishi, Radha, and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert at assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisances unto the Lotus Feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet as such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet of my spiritual master, his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare Hare Nitai Gaura Premanande Ki Jai. So we're continuing to do our review of the 7th chapter, beginning with verse 73, which we did yesterday. And we haven't finished it yet. And to understand what are the unique things that Lord Chaitanya introduced in the world of the Vedas, and which differentiates or just demonstrates the progressiveness of Krishna consciousness. He didn't do anything that was different from what the Shastras explain, but he amplified certain things that were not emphasized previously. And therefore, the main thing is Golokera Premadana Harinama Sankirtana. Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda brought down the transcendental holy names of Krishna in the form of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and emphasized that this is the Yuga Dharma in Kali Yuga. So that is a very important point, and everything is based on chanting the holy name of the Lord, and especially the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So, point number one that we discussed yesterday was that the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra puts us directly in touch with Krishna. And point number two, suffering is unnecessary. It's superfluous to the human being because we have an eternal soul. It's only when the human being, out of ignorance, identifies with the temporary material body, and the material body is material. So therefore it's subject to the laws of material nature, to time, to different kinds of miseries that are concomitant with preoccupation with the material body and sense gratification. Point number three was that Bhakti Yoga and Srimad Bhagavatam can convince one to always chant Hare Krishna, and therefore relieve one from the conditions or the conditional state of Maya. And if we are with Krishna, then Maya will not bother us. If we are without Krishna, Maya makes us suffer and experience miseries. So in order to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we have to avoid the 10 offenses of chanting the holy name, which we repeat every day. So, another thing about the holy name, when one chants Hare Krishna or Radha Krishna, immediately all knowledge is present, because all knowledge is present in Radha Krishna or Hare Krishna. Okay, so point 4 is that the holy name and Krishna are identical. And by transcendental knowledge, one is immediately free from the clutches of Maya and fully engages in the service of the Lord. Without service to the Lord, one cannot be free from fruitive activities. When one chants the Maha Mantra offenselessly, one becomes free of the material conception of life, and by rendering service, a devotee relates with Krishna in one of the 5 relationships, Santa, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. Okay, so let's go over this again. So yesterday we explained that point number 1, that the Hare Krishna mantra puts us directly in touch with Krishna. So these are the things that are unique about Lord Chaitanya's progressive revelations that he gave when he came. And it makes Lord Chaitanya unique in terms of his pushing forward or enhancing the knowledge of Krishna consciousness. And many of these things were not emphasized before. The Vedas are there, especially the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, but to emphasize certain things and also to make things very easy for people in this age to attain perfection. Previously, it was very hard. In Satya Yuga, people lived 100,000 years. Vishwamrita Muni, he meditated 60,000 years to raise himself up from being a Kshatriya to a Brahmana or a Brahma Rishi. And that was, and he had a lot of trouble. He also fell down. So it was difficult. Although in Satya Yuga, almost everyone was Krishna conscious. Then in Treta Yuga, one had to perform very, very elaborate yagyas. It cost a huge amount of money and very complicated. The mantras had to be said correctly. And in Dwapara Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, then it's, in Treta Yuga, then in Dwapara Yuga, it was very elaborate deity worship, which again costs a lot of money and requires a lot of ritualization. But in Kali Yuga, because this age is so unfavorable for making spiritual advancement, where 3/4 or more of the population are not devotees, it's very difficult to make tangible spiritual progress. So, taking that into mind, Lord Chaitanya came and established the Hare Krishna mantra as the Yuga Dharma and made it very easy to become liberated from the cycle of birth and death. And what does that mean? Well, it's simply these points that we're making now. First of all, that the mantra puts us directly in touch with Krishna. Even the most contaminated person, if they join the Harinam Sankirtan, they will feel glimpses of ecstasy right away, no matter how contaminated they are, if they will dance and chant with the devotees. And we saw that Saturday. Every time we go out on Sankirtan, we see it. But this past Saturday, it was especially apparent that there are many people looking for a simple and ecstatic spiritual experience. You don't have to do complicated asanas and pranayamas and dharana and so many different things, pranayamas and so many different things that require a lot of self-control and ultimately meditating on what is imperceptible, which is impossible. So these things, whether it's Buddhism or whether it's Mayavad philosophy or whether it's mystic yoga, Ashtanga yoga, are very difficult, and most people are not able to do it. And nobody's able to go up to the Himalayas and meditate alone in the dark, dank cave, and especially in the wintertime in the Himalayas. So these are impossible things to do in Kali Yuga. Maybe 1 or 2 people out of billions can do these things. However, Lord Chaitanya gave a system that anybody can do in any age, whether they're a child or an adult or middle age or old age or even on their deathbed. They can chant Hare Krishna. They can take prasadam. They can hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And if they're physically fit, they can chant and dance. And in this way, they can attain perfection rather easily. So number 1 is the Hare Krishna mantra puts us directly in touch with Krishna. Number 2, suffering is unnecessary. And this is like a revolutionary idea for people because everyone is suffering from something. It could be anxiety, it could be diseases, it could be a pandemic, it can be economic downturn, it can be war, it can be social ostracism, so many different reasons why people suffer, and usually due to strained relationships and the fact that most people in this age are living in the modes or under the control of the modes of passion and ignorance. So therefore, they're going to suffer. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to have difficulty in their relationships. And so everyone is in anxiety in the age of Kali. Just about everyone. And so but all of this is unnecessary. This is a revolutionary concept. And Anarthapasanam Sakshat Bhakti Yogam Hoksajay. So the first canto, 7th chapter, verse, it explains that suffering is superfluous because we have an eternal soul. If a person can accept that they have an eternal soul, they can also accept that there's a Supreme Personality Godhead. So that is very hard for people to understand. And you'd be surprised. You'd say, wow, they should understand that. But to convince people nowadays that they have an eternal soul is very hard. And it's due to all the false information given in schools. The schools are factories of ignorance that condition young kids, number one, to believe there's no God. Number two, when you die, there's nothing after that. Those two concepts are enough to make anybody an atheist. And they are emphasized. They are, what you would say, proactively preached in the schools. And it's very difficult for young kids to escape that type of false information, because all the emphasis is put on scientific knowledge, reason, and logic to attain the truth. So this is a big point. We're going to get to it now. But the second point is that suffering is unnecessary. And the third point is that Bhakti Yoga and hearing or reading Srimad Bhagavatam can convince one to always chant Hare Krishna. That's why it's absolutely imperative to come to the class every day. What do great sages do? They're always in assemblies, hearing and discussing transcendental subject of Krishna and his pastimes and his qualities, etc. This is what sages did for 1,000 years in Naimisharanya. 1,000 years, not 10 minutes, not 45-minute class. 1,000 years they did this as a yajna to try and figure out what would be the best way to help people in Kali Yuga. And what was their solution? Srimad Bhagavatam. And chanting Hare Krishna, and taking prasadam, and dancing. Prabhupada said, dancing is scientific. Dancing is scientific. When a person dances and chants Hare Krishna, they can actually feel the presence of Krishna and feel ecstasy. It's a glimpse of bhava. Bhava has different aspects to it. It's the state right before pure love of Krishna. So one symptom of bhava is continual engagement in devotional service. Another symptom of bhava is that you actually feel like Krishna is dancing on your tongue. You get begin. Bhava is the beginning of revelation. Our philosophy is revelatory. It's not academic. Anybody, the most ignorant, illiterate person in the world, can become a pure devotee if they will submit themselves voluntarily to hearing, shravanam, and kirtan, chanting, and then smaranam. Then they can remember. This constant repetition is absolutely important. It's a Vedic principle for learning Krishna consciousness. So, therefore, this bhakti yoga, engaging in devotional service and regularly hearing Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, this can convince someone to always chant Hare Krishna and therefore relieve the conditioned soul from Maya. Maya, as we said, when you're with Krishna, Maya leaves you alone. When you're not with Krishna, Maya gives you miseries. So people don't understand this. I don't even think devotees understand this sometimes. How can we be free of Maya? Well, the best way is to always chant and always be engaged in devotional service. So, therefore, we have to keep our focus on the goal of Krishna consciousness. What is that goal? Prema Pumartha Mahan, attaining pure love for the Lord. That is the ultimate goal of Krishna consciousness. And a symptom of that is one has no other preoccupation other than devotional service, association with devotees, chanting Hare Krishna. If you chant Hare Krishna in a solitary place, eventually you'll stop. If you always stay in this association of devotees, you'll never stop. Therefore, association of devotees, good devotees, not loose devotees, but good devotees who actually follow the regulative principles, then you also follow the regulative principles. Tell me who your friends are. I will tell you who you are. So, therefore, sending kids to schools is a type of child abuse. These modern schools are factories of, they're slaughterhouses. They slaughter one's belief in God. Therefore, a parent is actually abusing their child by sending them to these slaughterhouses of so-called knowledge. And Prabhupada was completely against it. And in the Ishopanishad, ninth mantra, it actually says, it's better not to be educated in this age than to be educated by the demons. It's better to be less educated. Say, I have a very close cousin, and she was a brilliant lady, and she, highly educated, very attractive lady, but she never got married. Why? She never found anyone that was good enough for her. You see. And this is what happens when you get overeducated, You get puffed up to such a point you can't even have a relationship with someone, right? So for a woman to have a compatible relationship with a man has to be subordinate. It's the psychology of a man and a woman. Now, if she chooses to marry someone who's actually in the mode of goodness, then she has not made a mistake. But if she marries someone who's in the mode of passion or ignorance, it's a big mistake. So without knowledge of Krishna consciousness, we actually ruin our lives. And we'll make many mistakes. So my cousin never got married. And she was, I would say, mostly bitter most of the time in her internal psychological makeup. So, number 4, the holy name and the Lord are identical. This is also absolutely important to understand, that when you're chanting Krishna's holy name, you're actually associating with the Lord. It's the Lord's presence in the form of sound vibration. Well, you associate with a lot of people by sound vibration. All of us do, right? People listen to the radio, right? In 1940s, 30s, and 40s, the radio was, people still listen to the radio, but the radio was all important for people. It's the way they got their information. They were associating with radio personalities like Walter Cronkite and other people like that. And they got their information every day. And we associate people with sound vibration all the time. We're listening to Prabhupada's tapes. That's Prabhupada's energy. Although he's not physically present, but he is present by the sound vibration. So in the same way, Krishna is present by the sound vibration of his holy name. And you associate directly with the Lord when you chant offenselessly. Therefore, one must avoid the 10 offenses to the holy name. So by transcendental knowledge, one is immediately free from the clutches of Maya and fully engages in the service of the Lord. Now, this is an important question. I've discussed this before. What's wrong with our children becoming brahmacharis and brahmacharinis and being trained? Like the Mormons, for example. They require their kids, once they graduate high school, not to go to college right away, but to spend 2 years preaching, door to door. And they'll send them to every country of the world, the United States as well as Mexico, as well as Europe, as well as Russia, Africa. They'll send them, and they send them 2 at a time. They have to be always with one other Mormon. And they preach for 2 years. It's great training, isn't it? Well, this is what Prabhupada was doing with us also, you know. We surrendered completely to him, and we just spent 24 hours a day, Krishna conscious. I went out on Sankirtan 5 years straight. And it's the best training in the world. You learn how to speak to people and convince people of things. And to do that, you have to go to sleep early, you have to wake up early, you have to follow the regulative principles, you have to chant 16 good rounds minimum. And we used to go out 16 hours a day on Sankirtan. Right? We were so enthusiastic that we wouldn't come back to the temple for lunch. The temple would bring the lunch to us wherever we were. Yeah, see, that was wonderful training. Okay, so therefore, by transcendental knowledge, one is immediately free from the clutches of Maya and fully engages in the service of the Lord. Without service to the Lord, one cannot be free from fruitive activities. When one chants the Mahamantra offenselessly, one becomes free of the material conception of life. Now, the material conception of life is a big subject, but basically, it's thinking that the goal, that there's no God, when you die, it's all over. Therefore, all the emphasis is put on sense gratification in this life. And the Mayavadis do the same thing. They say, oh, this whole world is illusion. Oh, that means you can play with the illusion, therefore, because it's not real. So one time I saw this person meditating, sitting in a lotus position, but they had a cigarette in their hand while they were meditating. So I went up to him and I said, excuse me, can I ask you a question? And he didn't say anything. He had his eyes closed. I said, excuse me, can I talk to you? He said, get away from me. I said, no, I just want to ask you, get away. And he opened his eyes and said, oh no, Hare Krishna. You are the most down people I've ever met. I said, no, but I just want to ask you a question. How can you meditate with a cigarette in your hand? He said, this proves that your guru has not taught you anything about spiritual life. This question. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, don't you understand? I am not this body. I said, okay, but why are you holding a cigarette? Don't you understand? I'm not holding the cigarette. Only my body is holding it. You see how confused people get, right? By Mayavad philosophy. So he basically was saying, I'm not this body, so if my body is smoking or if it's having sex, it has nothing to do with my meditation. See? So this is how crazy people are. This is how crazy people become by Mayavad philosophy. They imagine all these nonsense principles. So the symptom of Kali Yuga is people do not accept parampara. They do not accept the Aroha Panta, Avaroha Panta, the descending knowledge. They want ascending knowledge. So because of that, they put all their emphasis on science, logic, and reason. And argument. They advocate questioning. There are no sacred cows nowadays. You can question anything. You can question the existence of God. You can question why chant Hare Krishna. You can question anything you want. So Prabhupada talks about this, and he says, the principles of parampara system were strictly honored in previous ages, Satya, Treta, and Dwapara Yuga. But in the present age, Kali Yuga, people neglect the importance of this system of Shrota Parampara, or receiving knowledge by disciplic succession. In this age, people are prepared to argue that they can understand that which is beyond their limited knowledge, perception, their limited knowledge and perception through so-called scientific observations and experiment. not knowing that actual truth comes down to man from authorities. This argumentative attitude is against the Vedic principles and is very difficult for one who adopts it to understand that the holy name of Krishna is as good as Krishna himself. There it is right there. This is what they teach in school. They teach that there are no sacred cows, that you can question anything. And you can be argumentative. They think it's a positive way of, discerning what is the truth as opposed to what is false. So it's complete nonsense. Is there a way of arguing in the Vedic tradition? Yes, but it's based on asking humbly asking a question, not getting into a polemic. But the so-called Vedic experts, they love polemics. They love to get into arguments. And even in the GBC, they do it all the time. And it's a big mistake because questioning things is not a mistake. But arguing in order to win an argument is a mistake. Because what happens is one does not actually seek the truth. They seek rather to win. So that is a problem. And many times, the Prabhupada gives the example that there were two friends and they were walking together near a river and they got into an argument and went back and forth, and finally it became a heated argument, and one man became so upset he grabbed the other man and threw him in the river, and the other person didn't know how to swim. And as he was drowning, he put his hand up like this and went like that. So why did he do that? Because they had an argument about a scissors, right? And he had one theory about the scissors, the other guy had another theory about the scissors. So the last thing he does is he gives a signal like this, proving that, his point was right, and then he dies. This is crazy. It's crazy. People, and we've looked this up before, people will get in arguments for the most insignificant things. Like we looked up before, remember Chaitanya Sundar? Son murdered his mother because she took away the joystick, right?
And also an old man. There's two cases like that. An old man who's already in 70. He killed a 50-year-old son because he wanted to watch the video.
This happens all the time, all over the world. So this argumentative insistence is very, very detrimental. Okay, so since Krishna and his holy name are identical, the holy name is eternally pure and beyond material contamination. It is the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a transcendental vibration. There it is. The holy name is completely different from material sound, as confirmed by Narottam Das Thakura, Golokera, Premadana, Harinama Sankirtana. It's come down from the spiritual world. Now, how are people going to understand this? You get a meat eater and you explain this, they don't understand anything. Right? One time there was this man, he was I told this story before, he was a real estate agent. So we invited him to our temple. We were trying to buy a property. This is in France. And he had this very bad habit that, he would speak in French. He'd go, alors, je vais vous dire que je peux vous trouver un appartement. He'd go like that. Every 5 minutes, he'd go like that, So it was really funny. So I gave him a Srimad Bhagavatam, and he was fingering through it and looking at the pictures. And he stopped on one picture, and he just stared at it for a long time. So I noticed that. So I said, what are you seeing in that picture? He said, it's really good. This is real spiritual life. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, there's a naked boy and there are naked women. This is really spiritual. So he was talking about Sukadeva Goswami, right? He's walking naked, and the ladies taking a bath. They were not completely naked, but they had, these shrouds that you could almost see through. So I tried to explain to him that's not what this picture is about. But he refused to accept it. He said, no, I know what I'm seeing. Right? So this is the problem with the meat eaters. Now the Pope is a meat eater, right? So what can he understand about spiritual life? Very little. The Muslims are meat eaters, most of them. Hazrat Ali was mostly a vegetarian. In fact, he said, don't make your stomach a cemetery for dead bodies. Good statement. Right? But most all the Sunnis are meat eaters. And one of our devotees, he was working in this company, and there was one Buddhist lady there, so he was preaching to her about Krishna consciousness. Right? And one day, there was Ramadan going on, and there was a Muslim there, so he went up to her and he told her, oh, we had the greatest spiritual experience I've ever had in my life. She said, well, what happened? Oh, the Ramadan ended, and we killed at least 1,000 animals. And Allah is so pleased by it. And there's blood everywhere. And then we served the food to poor people also. So the next day, Ranti Dev met her, and she said, look, I'm really confused. He said, why? What's the matter? I said, well, you say don't eat meat. But the Muslim guy said, the more animals we killed, the more Allah was pleased. So I'm confused now. I don't know what the truth is. You see, this is what's going on in the world.
It happens in the so-called Hindu families also. Recently, two of our devotees, their parents passed away. So when they went to India, the relatives, they are planning for the next 13 days the ceremonies, right?
Yeah, you're supposed to listen to the special Purana where it explains all about hell.
No, but they are not doing all those things also. They are doing exactly what you mentioned now. They are planning how many goats they need to kill and serve all the relatives who attend.
See, this just proves, I've been saying over and over again, there's no difference today in India between the Hindus and the Muslims. Very little. There are only 25% of Hindus that actually are vegetarian. The other 75%, there's no difference between them and the Muslims. They're violating the Dharma completely.
And the relatives, they said exactly what you said, if you eat meat, the soul will be pleased.
Yeah. So anyway, we are faced with all these challenges. These are all misconceptions. And misconceptions are being taught in the schools. Like, for example, the scientists, what do? They're making weapons of mass destruction. The IT people, what do? They make weapons of mass destruction. Then the scientists, what do? Well, they make the weapons of mass destruction, right? IT people. Then the politicians, they make weapons of mass deception. So you have IT people, distraction, politicians, deception, scientists, self-destruction, right? Then you have the social engineering people and sociologists and so forth. They make theories of mass confusion, such as gender neutrality, such as gender fluidity, and also transgender they just confuse people, whereas before everyone was convinced that there are men and there are women. Now you have to, I think they're up to like 60 different pronouns that you have to know in order to work in the company. If you make a mistake on the pronouns, you can be fired. People are getting confused now, right? And then, and what are these false theories? Darwinism, it's a false theory. We all come from monkeys. Big Bang theory. This is taught as science in schools. Like, okay, you've gone to school in India?
Yeah.
Did they teach you about Big Bang?
Not about Big Bang, they taught about Darwin. Actually, they did teach about Big Bang.
This is India, right? The land of Dharma. They're teaching Big Bang. They're teaching Darwin, right? And then gender neutrality, critical race theory. This is in America. You have to come to America to get this one. That is, white people are bad. Right from 1619, which was the first time pilgrims came to the United States, they were all racists. They were white racists that came here. So America was founded on evil principles. The Constitution of the United States is evil. They teach this in schools now. They teach this to soldiers in the army. How long do you think the country can last with this type of philosophy? You know? And then everyone should be equal. It's another false theory. No one is equal. About the person who's born blind and the person who has eyes. How can you say they're equal, right? Everyone has a potential of becoming a devotee. Even if they're blind or deaf or dumb, they can still become a devotee. But everyone is equal? No one is equal. And the proof of that is men who claim to be women and compete with women in women's sports, they always win. And it's a big problem now because there's a lot of men, they figured out, look, I'll just say I'm a woman and I'll win all the races and I'll get the medals and because I can beat all the women, in swimming and jumping over a fence and this thing and that thing. So, and then there's no God and death is the end of everything. So all these false theories are taught in school. So how do you expect that your kid is going to come out of the school without having their whole Krishna consciousness damaged? Very little chance. And then they're getting trained. The girls are getting trained to be doctors, lawyers, and not Indian chiefs, but doctors and lawyers, and the scientists and things like that. Whereas before, women were taught to be humble and learn home science. Home science. It's a home science. How to cook, how to do deity worship, how to keep everything clean, how to train their children by example and affection and love, and how to take care of the husband so that he's the one who has to work hard. He's the one who has to bring the money home. And she keeps the house in a spiritual atmosphere so that when he comes home, he can forget about all the travails of earning money in this rat race competitive world. And but no, now they're both working. They put their children in some kind of school to take care of them or watch them. And in the school, they have the children in prime time. And the parents, they come home after working all day, and they're tired. They don't have any prime time, and the kid is being educated by watching television. And they give the kid, even like a 2-year-old kid or 1-year-old kid, they give him a cell phone, and they give him a computer. And then the kid learns, oh, mom and dad, they watch a little television and they go to sleep. And me, I now have my own room. I lock the door so they can't come in. And I'm on the internet all night long, enjoying meeting some of the worst scum of the world. and hearing nonsense from him. Just like the other day, this one Indian gentleman came and said, Prabhu, you have to help me. I said, okay, well, what do you want me to do? He said, my son has become a Muslim. I want you to convince him not to be a Muslim. I said, well, wait a minute. Are you a Vaishnava? He said, yeah, I'm a Sri Vaishnava. So how did your son become a Muslim? Well, he met some guy on the internet, and the guy convinced him, and he's been secretly going to the mosque, and now he openly says he's a Muslim. I said, well, whose fault do you think that is? That guy who preached to him? He said, yes, of course. I said, no, it's your fault. You never brought the boy here. You never come with him and sit down and listen to the class and do the homework that I give. I said, it's your fault. You never really taught him anything about Sanatan Dharma. You just taught him, you go to the temple, you go like this, ha-hoo, 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 make some prayer, please let me pass the SAT, and then you leave. You get a little piece of mystery or something like that. And that's your darshan, you know. And you came to see Krishna. You didn't come for Krishna to see you. You see, so when you come as the seer, you're actually coming for sense gratification. If you come as to be the seen, that means you accept that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the whole thing is nonsense. What do you expect that your kid became a Muslim? At least the Muslims, they pray 5 times a day. You don't even pray 5 times a day. You know, so you know the Sri Vaishnavas have completely failed in their ability to convince people to become, God conscious. They can't even convince their kids. Okay, so therefore, but then the final greatest nonsense is metaverse. Metaverse it's coming down the pike. She'll be coming down the mountain when she comes, right? It's coming down the mountain, the metaverse, where people will live in an alternate reality. They put this big thing in their face, and they can make any reality they want. They want to be the #1 NBA basketball player, even though they're only 4'10", right? It's crazy. We're already in Maya. Now they're going to put Maya on steroids, So, and our own people are working for those companies that are producing the metaverse, like Facebook and things like that. So this is like dangerous, very dangerous, because everyone will be completely in Maya. And then they'll eventually reduce that machine you have to put on your head to a chip that they put in your brain. And you can click into the metaverse anytime you want through that chip. And then people will be 24 hours a day in Maya. Right? Okay, so, and also the idea of empiricism and science and logic and reason and rejection of religious belief. Therefore, Prabhupada says, one remains in ignorance waiting for proof. One remains in ignorance waiting for proof. Prove to me that God exists. Well, yeah, we can prove to you that God exists, but you have to accept the process for understanding that. It's not that in your present state of rebellion, we can convince you. You have to have some submissiveness, and you have to go through a process of purification. Like, even if you go to the moon, when you come back, they have to purify you, because they don't want any germs from the moon coming to the earth, right? So the astronauts have to go through a purification process, to completely neutralize any bacteria that you're bringing back from the moon. Well, we have to purify all the bad bacteria that was put into your head by the schools and by the culture. Then when a person comes up, at least in a mode of goodness, then they can begin to understand. If you're in passion and ignorance, you won't understand anything. Okay, so there are many points that are inhibiting people nowadays from understanding Krishna consciousness. If you know what the points are, then you can address them, right? And also, there is belief that matter is the cause of everything, and rejection of a supreme intelligent God. And then consider sex the highest pleasure in the material world. So these are principles of misconceptions that are being taught to people, to kids especially. Okay, so coming back, we have discussed up to that the Maha Mantra is Sarva Mantrasar, the essence of all Vedic hymns. All right. And then Prabhupada says, the name that represents an object of this material world may be subject to arguments and experimental knowledge. But in the absolute world, a name and its owner, the fame and the famous, are identical, and similarly, the qualities, pastimes, and everything else pertaining to the absolute are also absolute. Although Mayavadis profess monism, they differentiate between the holy name of the Supreme Lord and the Lord himself. For this offense of nama aparada, they gradually glide down from their exalted position of Brahmagyana, as is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam, Arura Krichena, Param Padam Tata, Patanti Adyo Nadrita Yusmad Angraya. Although by severe austerities they rise to the exalted position of Brahmagyana, they nevertheless fall down due to imperfect knowledge of the absolute truth. Although they profess to understand the Vedic mantras, Sarvam Klav Idam Brahma, that everything is Brahma, they are unable to understand that the holy name is also Brahman. If they regularly chant the Maha Mantra, however, they can be relieved from this misconception. Unless one properly takes shelter of the holy name, he cannot be relieved from the offensive stage in chanting the holy name. So, what are we doing now? We are chronicling, we're taking notes, and we're going to correct the homework that we had last week, which is explain the unique things that Lord Chaitanya emphasized for people to become Krishna conscious in Kali Yuga, right? So we want to make a flow chart of all these unique things, or at least they're not exactly unique, but they were not so amplified as Lord Chaitanya did, so that it becomes the Yuga Dharma in this age, the way to attain liberation from the cycle of birth and death and go back to Godhead. Okay, so you've been taking notes? All right. So basically this is Adi Lila, chapter 7, verse 73 and 74. That's all we've got. That's all we've done so far. There's a lot more now. So we'll stop right there. What time is it now? 18, okay. Any questions? We have to know this because we have to be able to explain this to our own devotees, and we have to be able to explain it to the public. Yes?
In the past 2 years, because
We have
am I audible?
no. We have people listening on the internet, so they can hear your question.
So thank you very much for the class. And in the past 2 years, because of the pandemic, a lot of the preaching shifted online. And as a result, a lot of the classes occurred on Zoom, which obviously resulted in people gathering less in person. So what I've noticed is that devotees gather less in person nowadays as compared to earlier. Because you were speaking about the metaverse, and that is going to take it in another direction, where devotees don't have to gather physically at all. They just have to enter a metaverse and associate with each other. and they may end up calling it as Sangha. So what can we do to reverse the effects of such a mentality?
Well, don't send your kids to school. It's unnecessary. They can be educated at home. And they should be educated mainly in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And all they have to do, Prabhupada recommended, they should learn English really well and math really well. You can get tutors for that if you can't do it at home yourself. And once they know English very, very well and math very well, and then hopefully Sanskrit, they can pass any test, they can get any job they want, because they know how to think rationally and in a systematic way, and they know how to express themselves eloquently, and they know the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Right? That's all they have. That's education. Not all that other nonsense, black history. Who cares about black history? Well, of course, black people care about it, but it's not really going to do you any good learning black history or American history. I mean, all these history books are all about sex and war and lust and greed, right? Okay, you want to read history, you read Mahabharata. That's the history, how the world began, right up to the end of the Battle of Kurukshetra. So we see this has all been put aside. The British did this starting in 1825. They ruined the whole educational system in India. And they've trained up, I don't know, maybe 6 generations of Hindus. And that's why now is the real fruit of all that misinformation that they've done. And you have a lot of atheists now in India, and you have Hindus who don't really understand their philosophy, and you've had at least 2 generations where the Hindus have not been able to pass on their culture to their kids because of preoccupation of getting Microsoft qualified, or Amazon qualified or whatever. So there's a serious problem in India. I mean, they're trying to imitate the Americans, and it's ruining their culture. So it's all because of the educational system, and Bollywood, Hollywood television. Those 2 things are the main things that are ruining people's consciousness in India today, right? And to stop that is not going to be easy. I mean, the devotees are doing their best, but in a country where there's over 1 billion people, having, let's say, 800,000 people who are Krishna conscious, that's a drop in the bucket, right? So the only astras we have to fight such massive illusion is massive Harinam Sankirtan and Prasadam distribution. Those are the 2 main astras. And third is the book distribution. But see, the problem with the book distribution is you can give a person a book and get a donation for it. Okay, fine. But what are they going to understand? See, that requires personal touch for them to understand. Simply reading a book, any book, you'll come up with many misunderstandings, misinterpretations, right? So therefore, it requires personal, let's say, association with devotees to be able to understand the book. So therefore, Sankirtan should not simply be selling a book, but it should also be building up personal relationships with the people that got the book. That's absolutely essential. So instead of haphazardly having 1 out of 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 people reading the book and saying, I want to become a devotee, to having a huge number of people becoming devotees, not just every year we made, 80 IT guys, IIT people devotees. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. But what you want to do is have personal association with people who get the books to help them to understand. So there's different aspects, different theories, of course, but the personal touch is the best. That was the Vedic tradition. In the villages, there was always a brahmana who was not interested in making money, and he would educate the kids. He would have 5, 10 kids, and he would educate them. And once a year, they would give dakshin. And the brahmana had a vow of poverty. So he wasn't destitute, but he did not try. Even if he got donations, he would give most of it away to needy people. And he was there practicing Krishna consciousness and being available for all the people in the village for information about how to organize their life to go back to Godhead. That was the Aryan culture. See? So we have to be very careful because we're in that culture where we're supposed to represent that culture, And the vow of poverty is actually important. Prabhupada clearly says, better to be poor than rich. That way, you're more dependent on Krishna, right? And not that you have to be destitute, but you have to have what's called minimalist culture of maintenance, so that you have maximum time for cultivating Krishna consciousness. So that minimalist living, going to bed early, waking up early, and when people see this, they say, well, wait a minute, you got something that I don't have. I'm staying up till 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm waking up late, and then I got to rush to work, and I'm always behind the 8 ball, as they say in English. So, but, going to sleep before 10 o'clock, waking up in the Brahma Muhurta, at least 1 or 2 or 3 hours before the sunrise, that's a different culture. That is what our culture is supposed to be. You see. So how to teach these things to people? Only if they see you're happy and you are successful in Krishna consciousness. Happiness is infectious. It's the greatest virus in the world, happiness. So devotees, in order to be effective preachers, they themselves have to strictly follow and be happy and satisfied with this type of life. Then many people will join. So the Zoom, Chinese Zoom, it is, it's a type of association, but I agree with you, it's not as effective as in-person association. Just like there's that one picture of Prabhupada, he's teaching Dwarka, this young boy named Dwarka, and he's showing him how to write Sanskrit, right? That's the type of teaching that's required. And you need many teachers like that. I'm all for, I've proposed this to GBC many times, and I said, you have to recognize the equal importance of Shiksha and Diksha Gurus. Not that everything is Diksha Guru and Shiksha Guru is something lesser. They're both important. And I said, you can solve the problem with this female guru issue by making it clear that Shiksha and Diksha Gurus are equal, and many women and many men should be formally declared bona fide Shiksha Gurus. This would solve the problem. That way you have an army of gurus, which is what you need to transform the world. But now we have, unrecognized Shiksha Gurus in the movement, a lot of them. But they should be recognized, and we should emphasize the personal touch for helping people. become Krishna conscious. Personal touch. And you need an army of people to do that. That's my opinion. Hare Krishna. Any other questions? Okay, then we'll stop. Have Guru Puja. Oh, you have a question? Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Bol.
Maharaj, as you have mentioned about personal touch, and so in food truck we are able to do that personal touch. I've seen with few people, they are keep coming and they ask very important questions sometimes because they are keep eating prasadam and
Because you're giving them prasadam.
Yeah.
That's an astra. That's a
Asta,
weapon.
yeah. So
Weapon of mass conversion.
yes, so I have personally observed this personal touch is making a difference
Yeah.
with the help of food truck and prasadam distribution. Yeah.
You have to have the time for personal touch. You can't say, "Oh, I don't have any time. I have to give some deliverables to my team leader." But when you have that personal touch, then and that's what Prabhupada did. How did he start the movement in New York? He didn't have, he didn't have a lot of money. He didn't have any devotees. It was all by affection, not by dictate. I'm Guru, you have to accept what I say. No, it was affection. And what prasadam did he have? He just cut an apple into 6 pieces and gave it out to the devotees and chanted Hare Krishna and preached Bhagavad Gita. And look what he did with that. Made it into a gigantic movement. It's a personal touch, affection, love. That's what convinces people. Haribol. Okay, so who wants to chant Guru Puja? Beware of anything that comes from China, including Zoom Zoom. You didn't know that, right? See, you learned something new in class. We can, believe me, we can. They control the Zoom Zoom.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, who knows what they're capturing.
Yeah,
Right? So,
yeah.
Pada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Vando Mohi Savadhana Mate Vando Mohi Savadhana Mate Vando Mohi Savadhana Nyahara Prasade Bhai Ei Bhavatariya Jai Nyahara Prasade Bhai Ei Bhavatariya Jai Krishna Prapti Hai Yahai Te कृष्ण प्राप्ति हो तेरे कृष्ण प्राप्ति हो गुरुमुख पद्म वाक्य चित्ते ते करिया गुरुमुख पद्म चित्ते ते करिया आर न करी हो मने आशा आर न करी हो मने आशा आर न करी हो श्री गुरु चरणे रते ऐसे उत्तम गति चरणे ऐसे उत्तम गति यही प्रसाद पूरे सर्व आशा ये प्रसाद पूरे सर्व आशा ये प्रसाद पूरे चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से जय चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्ति यहाँ ते अविद्या विनाश जाते प्रेम भक्ति यहाँ ते अविद्या विनाश जाते वेदे गाय आहार चरित वेद गाय आहार चरित श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अदम जनार बंधु श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु अदम जनार बंधु लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवन लोकनाथ लोकेर जीवन आहा प्रभु कर दया देहो मोरे पद छाया आहा प्रभु कर दया देहो मोरे पद छाया ए बेजश गुशुक त्रिभुवन ए बेजश गुशुक त्रिभुवन श्रील प्रभुपाद पतित पावन जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.
Radha Krishna Gaur Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Mayapuri Dham ki jai, Janakpuri Dham ki jai, Tulasi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Ganga Maya ki jai, Jamuna Maya ki jai, Samaveda Bhakti Devi ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to Sambhava, all glories to Sambhava, all glories to Sambhava, glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to His divine grace, His Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
The lotus feet of our spiritual minister, the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow down to the lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By His grace, one can cross the ocean with your suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my conscience purified by the words emanating from His lotus feet. Attachment to His lotus feet is a perfection that fulfills all desires. Removes my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From Him ecstatic. By Him